Okay, it is 2 o'clock, so we will call to order our regular meeting of council and start by recognizing that we're holding our meeting today on the unceded territories of the Sachot and Hupachesit First Nations. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add from councillors? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a late item, I'd like to add attendance at the British Columbia Not-for-Profit Housing Association Conference that occurs next week on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I noted as I received my computer this morning that there was an email waiting for all of us on it from BCNPHA inviting up to 2 members of council to attend for free at their cost. And as I am already going at my cost, I was wondering...
We will add it as a late item.
Thanks.
And you can explain more at that point, but that's perfect. Thank you. I'll add it under new business, so we'll make that item M1. Any other items to add today? Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to have a notice of motion under new business. Do I have to declare that now, or can I declare that then?
If you want to just say what the subject is, then we can add it. And if it's a notice of motion, we don't have to discuss still. But
yeah, it would be
ahead.
On council regular meeting times and committee of the whole times. Please.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other items? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have another matter for new business. It would be a notice of motion with regards to receiving a staff report on UNDRIP.
On what?
UNDRIP?
Wonderful. And any late items from staff?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Then would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the additions of items M1, M2, and M3? So moved. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we'll go on to adoption of minutes. We have minutes from the special meeting held at 10 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on October 24th, 2022, as well as from the special meeting held at 10 a.m. on October 31st, 2022, and the inaugural meeting held at 7 p.m. on November 7th, 2022. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we'll move on to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. A maximum of 4 speakers for up to 3 minutes each will be accommodated. Would anyone like to come forward today? Come forward. If you don't mind starting, just introduce your name and address.
My name is Robert Webster. I live at 4067 Compton Road. The pictures are in here. You'll get to see it. The city has been plowing in my driveway. He said it wasn't happening. You were in that meeting. There's the pictures. I couldn't find them on my phone. There's the pictures. They are time-stamped and geotagged. These pictures were taken when my mother was 84 years old. She owned the house. It was 2 days before I had to carry her out to her car and put her in her take her to the hospital. She had osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and scoliosis. She had an embolism in her right arm. She had to use a walker to get around, and you were plowing her in. This was the 4th time it happened. It's never going to happen again. Is that clear? An answer is required. Is it clear?
This is not a question and answer, and I don't have background on that.
And I'm just going to read the last page of this thing I've got printed up here. Says, I have repeatedly tried to obtain information in these matters only to be turned away with threats of criminal charges or use of force by your bylaw enforcement officers. That constitutes multiple violations of my charter right to access to information that gets directly laid at the feet of Mayor Minions, who, as the head of local government, is required to ensure that her staff provides access to information. This information is to be provided upon request to all Canadian citizens and residents Any violation of the act is a crime. Okay. For the past 2 years, I've paid property tax on the title of the property that I bought from my mother's estate. For the past 2 years, my property taxes have been screwed up. I haven't been able to come in here to do anything about it because Mr. Ply accused me of being a thief and a trespasser and a liar.
Mr. Webster, you
never
are
happened.
welcome to speak here today, but I need your tone to be respectful toward our staff,
Kind of
our
hard to be
council.
respectful when your staff is calling me a liar and shouting it out across a crowded room.
Okay,
It's very hard to be respectful. I've been trying to get this dealt with for years and nothing's ever been. This started in 2006. I paid for simple dog licensing. No record of any payments. I've got the tags, I've got the receipts, no record of any payments. Failure to record financial transactions is fraud. Simple. If I pay you and you don't record it, you're committing fraud. They were never recorded. I have the receipts, I have the proof, I have a letter from your staff admitting that they had done it.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Our 3 minutes is up. If there's additional information you'd like to discuss, I think we should do it in a different manner because we don't have the background on what you're bringing forward today.
Read them, please. Keep them out of his hands. He doesn't deserve to see them. Oh, and also, this is what you say is licensing.
Okay, the 3 minutes is up for today.
Never made it on my license account. Collecting my money and failing to record it is theft.
Are there any other speakers for today?
I do not want my property taxes to be screwed up next summer when I come in to pay. You can send the police to my house anytime, Mr. Bly.
Okay, seeing no more speakers for public input and no delegations, no unfinished business, we'll go to staff reports. Who does staff reports now? Where's Councillor Washington?
Madam Mayor, our Director of Finance will come up.
Changing the process
Sorry.
though, or is it just that we haven't
Just,
given?
just until we get a chair for our committee.
Sorry.
There's no chair for that meeting.
We have our audit committee scheduled for the 28th, so when that meeting happens, then we will have that addressed going forward. But at this meeting, we just invited the Director of Finance to come up and talk about the accounts.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay. So I'll just read the recommendation from staff and seek council's support. So that the certification from myself, the Director of Finance, dated November 14th, 2022, be received and the checks numbered 151618 to 151737, totaling including in payment of the accounts totaling 1.787742 million, 0.17 cents.
Councillor Douglas.
I'd like to make that motion of approval, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, on to item number 2 from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage. We have the Canadian National Old Timers Baseball Federation Championship.
I apologize, Madam Mayor, the name still has not changed since the last time we met. So, Madam Mayor, Port Alberni has been approached to host the 2023 Canadian National Old Timers Baseball Federation Championship. At the October 24th regular meeting, Council had passed a motion of support and directed staff to begin planning for the necessary work. In order to prepare the 2 baseball diamonds, so one at Lawn Miles and one at Recreation Park for this event, staff recommend that Council provide early budget approval of $240,000, and you'll find various options to fund that work outlined on page 15 of your agenda package.
Thank you. Are there questions to start? Councillor Haggard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did watch it on YouTube, and it was my understanding that the championship had not been awarded. They were asked to apply for it. So are we going to go ahead and do the work even though we haven't had confirmation they've actually been awarded the championship?
So, Madam Mayor, the local organizing committee, I believe the technical terms they heard from the federation was that it's ours in Port Alberni if we wish to host. So at this stage, the national organizers are waiting for our confirmation. So at this stage, they understand that this process is going on with council, and in the event that we can have fields ready, yes, we would be awarded the championship.
Thank you. Councillor Solda?
Madam Mayor, I also look at it, the fields need to be done. It's been a long time coming. No matter what, we need to move forward on it. So I totally agree with this.
Thank you. I'm wondering, because we have 4 new councillors here, if you could just give some, a bit more background on how we'll go through deciding how to fund this through budget, and when, because we don't need to make that decision on where it would be funded from today. We just have to give the early approval. But even if you could explain that process and why it's coming now rather than at budget time.
Absolutely. So I'll ask our Director of Finance to speak to the specifics. But one thing just to touch on Councillor Solda's mention as well, Madam Mayor, is that, so just to give new faces the awareness as well, that we have 19 fields here in our inventory. These 2 fields represent, so the 2 Lawn Miles and Recreation Park represent 2 of the fields in more desired condition, meaning more of a need at first to do the work. We also, council will see as we start to move through our next 5-year financial plan process that staff are currently developing a long-term plan to address all 19 fields. So this is not a situation where staff wish to come repeatedly to council to talk about one-off initiatives. Staff are currently building a plan for all 19 fields, encompassing all of them together. And I would love to defer to our Director of Finance on the specifics.
Thank you, Director Thorpe. Madam Mayor, so in the report, there is a few different options that we put in the alternatives. The option that we're recommending is that we get early approval to undertake this and work it within the budget that we have and work it within the taxation component of our financial plan. Another option we could have sought is use the Parks and Rec capital reserve as far as an option to fund this. That wasn't chosen because there's many projects that we need to undertake for that funding, and we'll look at other opportunities, and we could do a capital plan as far as a capital reserve, such as our general capital reserve or our gas tax funds or some other form of funding. Or we could look at reducing levels of service in other areas. Choose not to fund certain projects and reallocate for this project, but the options that we provided council and the recommendation support us going forward with this and working within the budget that we have, and possibly working with our taxation funds for 2023 to pull this off.
Thank you. Are there follow-up questions on this? Councillor Douglas.
I was just wondering, Madam Mayor, does the regional district contribute any funding towards these type of projects?
Such an excellent question. Andrew, do you want to comment on that?
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Douglas. So at this time, there is a small portion that the regional district provides the city for some recreational funding, but it's a very small amount depending on the region. And in total, I believe it's around $70,000 for the entire Alberni Valley Regional District. It hasn't changed in many years, and that's been the way for probably at least the last 10 to 15 years. So that's their contribution annually to the Parks and Rec program through the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, are you able to speak to user fees, or Willa, to user fees and kind of the history there?
Madam Mayor, are you referencing field fees or in general? So at this stage, at this point in time, there is no user fee or rental fee associated with using any field. So if you go swimming, there is a fee attached. If you use any of our other facilities, go to the multiplex, there are fees attached, except on any of our fields at this stage, there is no cost to utilize our fields.
Whether someone is a city or a regional district resident.
Correct.
Tim?
Madam Mayor, if I can add, Director McGifford mentioned the Parks and Rec Reserve. And Parks and Rec Reserve is, unless I'm mistaken, the funds come primarily from user fees from the aquatic center and the rink. But given that there's no user fees on fields, that reserve fund has not been populated by field user fees. And given that Director Thorpe tells us there's 19 fields to be addressing, Council may want to consider user fees in the future as part of maintenance and capital projects. And I'll warn you ahead of time that it probably won't be a topic that the field users will want to entertain, given that the history has been what the history has been. But it would be prudent to consider field user fees as part of the master plan for maintenance.
And Madam Mayor, just to add as well that there have been investments by field users. So there has been some field improvements done. So just to ensure council's aware of that as well. So folks watching, say just a minute now, there has been investment by user groups on the fields. Yes, there have. However, when we talk about on a day-to-day basis, if they're a league or a participant or you and your family would like to go and utilize one of our 19 fields, there is no cost for you to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Patola and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I probably already know the answer to this question, but through to the director, do we know whether or not the organization requesting this funding for the Canadian National Old Timers Baseball Federation Championships, if they have petitioned the regional district for support as well as the city?
Madam Mayor, I'm not aware that they have. I haven't heard one way or the other. I do know that they are in the process of discussing potential sponsorships and other investments from nonprofit or local private business, but I am not aware of any discussion happening at the ACRD level.
Thanks, and I can just add that this has not been brought to the ACRD, and currently the ACRD doesn't have a service for this, so it's not something that could just be brought there and funded. It does require more of a long-term strategy to talk about where, what equitable rates would be, and I think probably we should be discussing user fees, and maybe there's different user fees for people who don't contribute through taxation. So where council kind of left this at the last meeting was that we wanted to support this initiative, that we recognized that the fields need to be done, that those are our assets, we have a responsibility to take care of them, and that this work needs to be done regardless. If we can do it on a timeline that will support this tournament being hosted, then I think that's something we can all, be excited about because it's a great initiative in the community. And I think longer term, we need to be looking at how to start recouping costs on the field, just like we do for any of our other assets and facilities. So I think that we should absolutely be having a conversation in the near future about user fees and whether there's different user fees for people who live in the city or out. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, one of my notes is maybe we should look at anybody from the regional district in that using our fields. We should have a cost for that. Also, regarding Parks and Rec Reserve, I don't want to take any money out of this from our reserve from Parks and Rec. We have a lot of pieces of fields and parks that need some upgrading, and I would rather use it for that. So, Madam Mayor, I'm going to move that the Council for the City of Port Alberni provide early budget approval of $240,000 in the 2023-2027 financial plan for the cost to prepare lawn miles and recreation park baseball diamonds to host the 2023 Canadian National Old Timers Baseball Federation Championship.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda.
No, second.
Seconded by Councillor Douglas. Is there further conversation or questions on this? Okay. Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and item number 3 from the Director of Finance, we have the award of request for proposals, RFP 00822 of investment management services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So today, staff are asking that we award the investment management services to Canaccord, or cash management Canaccord Genuity for a 5-year term. So the city of Port Alberni has used the investment services of Raymond James since 2015 in alignment with our investment policy that we've had. That policy was recently updated in 2019, and this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to put this service out for RFP. We generally have balances between $10 and $27 million in these investment accounts. Interest usually ranges between $200,000 and $400,000, depending on what the interest rate environment is. So, there are some significant funds that we do invest over the year. Obviously, right after tax collection in July, we have our highest balances, and then through the year, we deplete that, and usually about May is our lowest balances in those accounts. So when we looked at the RFPs that were submitted, we looked at the investment strategy that was provided within those RFPs, the firm profile and experience, how often are they servicing these municipalities across the province, fees and services for delivery of that service, the proponent liaison, that's an important person within the organization that allows us to find the best value for our investments. And then, of course, we included a social procurement component in this RFP. And we're trying to take an opportunity to look at social procurement across any RFPs that we do put out for public opportunity. And with those factors considered, Cash Management Group Canaccord Genuity was the highest scoring proponent. So that's why they have been awarded been recommended for the award of the investment agreement for the next 5 years.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. Okay, seeing none. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that council award request for proposal number 008-22 investment management services to Cash Management Group Canaccord Genuity for a 5-year term.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And item number 4 from the Director of Corporate Services, we have the 2022 general election results.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Speaking to you as the Chief Election Officer, as I am required to provide a report to Council within 30 days after the declaration of the official election results, which took place on Wednesday, October 19th at 3 p.m. So the report, a number of attachments are included, including those official declaration that was done on the 19th of October, as well as a summary outlining a ballot tally, which accounts for all the votes cast and the ballots issued, those spoiled, and also those addressing dealing with the mail ballot option. Also attached is a estimated voter turnout for prior years and then in 2022, as well as the communications plan that the city chose to enact as we led up to general voting day. A couple things that I would like to highlight that transpired in the election, and they're outlined in bullets on pages 2 and 3, was just talking about the voter turnout historically. And it was, for this last election, down as compared to the voter turnout in 2014 and 2018. But we were still slightly above the provincial average, which was determined to be 29.2% in 2022. Also wanted to just touch on the fact that the City of Port Alberni adopted a new bylaw for the 2022 election. In that bylaw, the major change for that was to introduce and allow for mail ballot voting. In that bylaw, we elected, because of the mail ballot voting, to eliminate the special voting opportunities, which was typically where the city would go directly to care facilities and the hospital to allow individuals that reside there to cast a ballot. Because the mail ballot option was for all eligible electors, again, that was left off as an option this time around, being the special voting. That didn't preclude those residents from taking advantage of the mail ballot or perhaps having a relative or a friend transport them to the voting place, where we would then have provided for curbside voting. And curbside voting is where somebody can actually attend to the voting place. They were instructed to call our deputy chief election officers, and then a team of 2 people minimum, would go out and take a ballot to them, and they would cast a vote just like anybody would coming into the voting place. There was some concerns expressed from the operator of the Fur Park and Echo Village City, that Echo Village Park, pardon me, that we did not allow for the special voting this time around, but we thought we had a workaround on that. Also want to highlight the use of this past time the city used the provincial list of electors. In that, there was some concerns, I understood, from the community that voters were not being asked for ID. Just for clarity, the report speaks to that we are not legally allowed to ask for ID for those voters that are already listed on the list of electors. We are only allowed to ask for ID if people are registering for the first time, or if they have a change in address, or if they have a change in name. So that was transpiring if people were attending to the new registration table where that was being done. The other piece I'd like to highlight is the challenges around election signage this go around, and the difficulties in both candidates and city staff when it came to applying what should be permitted, what shouldn't be, and in particular, the case of putting signage on city property, which in this case is boulevards. And we determined along the way that boulevards vary, the size of boulevards vary throughout the city depending on where you are. So it was a suggestion from myself from this time in advance of the next election that the chief election officer of the day or the corporate officer look at the sign bylaw and perhaps make amendments to that particular bylaw, or doing the new election bylaw for 2026, that there be a statement in that bylaw that covers signage going forward, and look to simplify that signage during that process. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know this is the first year for mail-in ballot voting, but I know people that were going on holidays and weren't going to be here to be able to vote, and they inquired about the mail-in ballot voting, but the ballots weren't prepared yet. It was too soon. So maybe next year, if you could just make a mental note, well, you won't be here, but to make sure that the ballots are ready in a timely manner, a little bit earlier next year.
So if I may, there's an extremely challenging to have the ballots prepared to capture everybody that's not going to be here. We don't have that final determination until, I think this time around was the last part of September, by the time you have that opportunity where candidates can withdraw, etc. So we can only give that go-ahead at a certain time frame. And then, of course, we actually had a very quick turnaround, I feel, with our ballots. I actually picked them up Monday, the 20-something of September. It was actually, but we also have to test those ballots then as well before we release. So there's quite a bit of work that's behind the scenes, and with us using 4 voting machines and a variety of cards, all have to be tested. So it was a little bit time consuming, but thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Councillor Solda.
Yeah. Regarding the senior facilities, could we just have a note in there, because to bring it back to the senior facilities, there are seniors that don't even have relatives in that, and they're in there. And I would like to see it go back to the senior facilities. I know we have the curb and we have mail-in, but a lot of them don't understand that or realize that, and I would like to see that back. Thank you.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wondering, these issues are fresh in our mind. Is now the appropriate time to address a rewriting of either the sign bylaw or the election bylaw and put in these considerations with regards to special voting? Or should they be diarized for 3.5 years from now?
I think it would be great for council. I agree. They're fresh in our minds. I think it makes sense for council to maybe even give some consideration to what would make sense. Whether it happens, the review happens 6 months from now or 2.5 years from now, I think doesn't necessarily matter, but that direction that we give, I think, is important sooner rather than later. And Twyla, do you want to speak to what you would see as
I was
process?
just going to suggest the report definitely diarizes that, and we can make a note about the special voting opportunities, that it is the desire of the 2022 council to have that reinstated. I would caution about preparing a bylaw too far in advance, because even this general local election, we weren't receiving the final direction as it relates to mail ballots in particular in this case until June of 2022, just before we finally adopted the bylaw. So legislation is always changing, and my past history of my time in local government, it always seems to be happening that same year of an election where election legislation is being impacted. So coming out now with an amended bylaw, you would just be probably having to revisit that, but we can certainly diarize the desire of council about the signage piece as well as the special voting opportunity.
Councillor Patola, anything else specifically to add?
No,
And it-
thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and it could come back at a future meeting as well. It's not urgent that we give direction today. I think for me, the signage was definitely the most challenging piece as a candidate to navigate. Even, you know, having read the bylaw, even having spoken with people, it was very different than it has been in the other two elections I've been in, and for that reason, it was very confusing. I think that we need something, you know, whether it's no signs or signs all in one place or signs on, you know, private property, but getting rid of the boulevard section, because if there's not a map that goes along with that to tell you exactly where your signs can and cannot be in what appears to be someone's yard, then it's really not functional for a candidate or the city to have to try to figure out. So I think that piece definitely needs some improvement. But overall, I think that we did well with getting information out this time around. I think the city did a great job of putting information on social media that we haven't necessarily seen before, you know, for an election. And then, of course, all of the kind of typical ways as well. Okay, so this report is just for information, and Twyla's going to note, of course, the piece about special voting opportunities, and if there's any other direction that people would like to bring back at a future date, then that can be brought anytime as well. Okay, we'll move on to bylaws. Item number 1 from the Director of Finance, we have Waterworks and Sewer Bylaw Amendments 2022.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So back in July of 2022, we brought forward the amended financial or the amended bylaws for water and sewer. At that time, it was all based on the annual increase for the water and sewer, based on what we planned in our financial plan for 2022-2026. With that, our water and sewer bylaw is one of our stronger components as far as our asset management process. We've been looking at a long-term financial plan for our general projects within our water and sewer services. With that, we use a software that supports that long-term financial plan for our assets, and it provides us with the anticipated increases that we need to make for our water and sewer. So with that, we did get the first 3 readings of the water and sewer bylaw in July, but it wasn't brought back in August to be in effect for September 1st, 2022. So with that, we could not change the water and sewer fees for the September 1st deadline, and we'd have to rescind 3rd reading and then amend the start date for the increases of 5% for each water and sewer, effective January 1st, because our accounting system won't allow us to have a start date in the middle of our billing period, essentially. And what that does is it does lower the amount that we anticipate for our water and sewer fund for revenue in 2022. So staff are asking that council rescind 3rd reading and then amend that based on the change that would take effect on January 1st, 2023. And that has an impact to our water and sewer revenue in our sewer fund by $51,071, and in our water by $56,331. Sorry. So with that, I'm here for any questions that council might have.
Thank you. Are there questions on the rates? Any questions on the background of where we're at with water and sewer rates? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just reading it right now, and I'm just going through. So we have, of course, a special service agreement with the Hoopachessa, Seychot, and the Beaver Creek Regional District area, whatever it is. Am I reading that right? They're getting city water at 50 cents per cubic meter, and a single-family residential in the city of Port Alberni is paying 67. So we're actually selling the water for less than we would charge our own people, our own residents. Sorry.
Madam Mayor, to Councillor Mealy. Yeah. With that, obviously, we've had a bulk arrangement for both the First Nations to provide water, and what they do is we provide the water right to their properties, and then they distribute, and they have their own cost to not only take the water and distribute it, but also treat it. With Beaver Creek, that started in 2012, and we had this similar agreement that was negotiated between the ACRD and the council at the time agreed to that same bulk rate. So that is something that we've done for a long period of time, and a lot of our agreements with our First Nations are very historic and go back to the 60s. So I think it's something that we haven't looked at in recent memory, but that is the current practice.
Sorry, that was my follow-up. Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Is that, has the rates changed over those years? Has been the same rate, or have we upped them as well as our own residents?
Madam Mayor, we've had increases based on the rate increases that we've seen with our residential rate, but of course, being a lower rate and lower starting rate, it doesn't accelerate as quickly, so there might be a larger spread, but they've seen the same percentage increases year over year.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I think it's, I think there's some justification there for sure. However, it is, changing times, and we are seeing more development in Beaver Creek specifically, where they are benefiting from having access to city water, and in some cases that does, that kind of tax divide that we see and that gap probably gives more of an advantage in, the Beaver Creek area, for instance, than in the city. So it might be something that we want to come back to and relook at. Councillor Mealy?
Sorry, one more time, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And again, I totally believe everyone deserves clean water. So it doesn't, that's not, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same level playing field. Maybe not so much the two First Nations, but definitely in the regional district. If they're going to be, buying our water and taking our water and that, then, we need to be good neighbors. That's all it is. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And on the rate increases, I always like to say, because we have seen some pretty significant rate increases for sewer and water over the last, I think, probably about 10 years. 3 councils ago now, a study was done before I was on council, and that really was kind of the start of asset management for us on sewer and water, and it recommended some pretty big increases to be sustained over time, and each council since has continued those increases, and I think they were supposed to be over now and dropping back down to 2% or cost of living, and that hasn't happened because we've seen such a cost escalation of our asset replacement, the costs of that. So but those increases were done very much on a plan to make sure that over time we had a sustainable system, that we were able to maintain our infrastructure, and the work has been, of course, being done and significant investment in our services. So while I think increase in fees is always a challenge for people, it is with the basis of making sure that we can maintain our assets in a long-term way. Councillor Dame, would you like to read these motions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. We are, oops, I'm too close. Both? We're on just the first one, right? Yeah, sure. I move that council rescind third reading of City of Port Alberni Waterworks Bylaw number 5062, 2022, resolution number R22-171.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on this one? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, carried. If you want to continue with B.
Certainly. I move that City of Port Alberni Waterworks Bylaw number 5062, 2022 be read a third time as amended.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy. And seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? None opposed, carried. Go ahead.
I move that City Council rescind third reading of City of Port Alberni Sewer Connection and Regulation Bylaw number 5063, 2022, resolution number R22-174.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame,
Second?
seconded by Councillor Douglas. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? None opposed, carried.
I move that City of Port Alberni Sewer Connection and Regulation Bylaw number 5063, 2022 be read a third time as amended.
Second?
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you.
And finally, that I move that council authorize staff to amend City of Port Alberni 2022 to 2026 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5045 of 2022 by reducing water fund revenue by $56,031 and sewer fund revenue by $51,071 in 2022.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no questions on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. No correspondence for action, no proclamations. So moving on to correspondence for information. Twyla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's 8 items under Council's correspondence summary. You have correspondence expressing thanks as it relates to a housing development, correspondence of congratulations for the newly elected council. You have a number of communications from the various ministries in response to council's meetings held with ministers at UBCM. You have minutes from the APC, the Alberni Valley Museum and Heritage Commission, as well as draft minutes from the Traffic Advisory Committee in October. Then you have communication from the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities regarding the next phase in their engagement plan regarding the open pen salmon farming and as it impacts coastal communities in BC.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Regarding item H, I'd just be happy to put my name forward as a designate should you be unable to attend the event that's mentioned in that correspondence.
Thank you. I am unable to attend. I think that we had, I'm not sure if we've asked anyone to attend yet or if we just intended to bring it here. Okay, perfect. So Councillor Douglas, if you'd like to attend, is council okay with that? Okay, okay. I think you're set to attend then. I don't think we need a formal motion for that. Any other items councillors would like to highlight or speak to? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. There's no report from in camera today. Council reports, we're brand new, but this is just an opportunity for councillors to highlight any specific committee meetings, updates that have happened. We used to do these verbally, and we certainly can do that. We also, people will sometimes submit written reports, specifically if you've gone to UBCM and have more information that you want to convey to council, then a written report is a great way to do that. If you want to just highlight something that you've been to where there was a community update that's important for all of council to be aware of, this is a great opportunity for that. What we kind of try to avoid is just mentioning places you've gone, and rather it's more useful if you can talk about what happened at those meetings rather than just all the meetings that we attended. That's my personal pet peeve. So are there any items that councillors would like to highlight, recognizing that we just got sworn in a few days ago? Okay, seeing none. Okay, lovely. Next time. And new business. So we'll start with the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. Councillor Patola, if you want to just speak to it, and then actually I'll start by just making a motion that we approve you attending. And seconded by Councillor Solda. And then if you want to just speak to the background, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry for my long introduction previously. This is a conference put on by the BC Not-for-Profit Housing Association. It's a yearly conference with probably over 2,000 attendees from different organizations. Knowing that safe, affordable rental housing is an issue for our community like every others, I had already intended on attending it previous to becoming part of this council. And now I've received a email saying that they would like us to attend for free. So I'm thankful for the motion being put forward that I would attend, and I'll try to recoup my costs on that matter.
Thank you. And I think this is it's an excellent session to go to. I'm not sure if any other members of council well, actually, we have an overlapping session next week, so nobody else may not be able to attend, but that's fine. In the future, hopefully we can, because, yeah, it's very valuable. Okay, so motion is moved and seconded for Councillor Patola to attend. Okay, seeing no other comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Any opposed? None opposed.
I presume I should abstain.
I think you're in favor. Thank you. Okay, and then I just wanted to highlight quickly for council. So we do have 2 notices of motion. Twyla, do you want to maybe speak to, and then we'll actually read them out, but just to help council understand the new business section of our agenda, notices of motion, when you can make them, and actual motions, just so that everyone can understand process-wise.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So under new business, council is more than welcome, as was done at the very beginning of the meeting, to put forward any late requests if we haven't captured it on the agenda in advance of it being finalized and distributed. So was the case with Councillor Patola when he was looking for council's approval for attendance at the upcoming conference. That was an item for new business. A notice of motion is just that. This is council's or a councillor's opportunity or the mayor's opportunity to introduce what you intend to discuss and bring forward at a future meeting, or you can specify the exact meeting you would like that notice of motion to be, that motion to be considered. So at today's session, given the introduction of the late items for notice of motion, I would expect that Councillor Measley will be just reading his motion, and we will capture that, and then it will be placed for discussion and business at the next regular meeting of council, and similar with Councillor Patola.
Thank you. And so a notice of motion, it certainly can be brought forward at the start of the meeting when we amend the agenda. It doesn't have to be. So if anyone ever doesn't think of it at the beginning of the meeting, it's perfectly fine to add it under new business when we get to that section of the agenda. If someone would like to make a motion for discussion and add it into new business, I think best practices for that to make sure we do that at the start of the meeting, so that everybody watching the meeting knows that that's coming, since it's not written on the agenda. And it's also fine to add the notice of motion then as well, just saying in case anyone misses it that you're still able to add it at the end. And a notice of motion, it won't get seconded at this meeting and we won't discuss it. It's just for stating it, and then we'll discuss it the next one. So with that, I've got council meeting times first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a notice of motion. The Council for the City of Port Alberni hold their regular council meetings at 7 p.m. and the Committee of the Whole meetings at 6 p.m. starting in the 2023 calendar year.
Thank you. And then Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have to find it now. And I'm not sure where it is. There we go. I'd like to make a motion that the city staff provide a report to council prior to the end of January, setting out what previous actions the city has taken to date regarding the application of UNDRIP, that being the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
Thank you. And just to clarify, notice of motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so those notices of motion are both captured for the next meeting. Any other items of new business today? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just following up on the previous instructions and clarification to council from the corporate officer. Madam Mayor, I'm wondering if, and maybe not right away today with an answer, but in the future sometime, if we could have a comment on the application of section 15 of the procedure bylaw. Just the way it's worded, bylaws sometimes aren't all that clear. It seems to imply that should council wish something put on the agenda, they can do so before noon on the Wednesday previous. So I'm wondering if we had a motion to make. It seems in my reading, although I stand to be corrected, that we could make that motion by providing it to the corporate officer before noon on Wednesday prior to the council meeting.
That's definitely my interpretation of it and understanding as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we can, and I think that we should, I mean, we talked a little bit about council orientation earlier today. I think that an orientation on currently our procedures bylaw would be helpful. There's also a number of changes that we've talked about making to the procedures bylaw to open it up in a variety of ways. So I think we could have more conversation on, you know, how we'd like to see our procedures change in the near future as well. And we could maybe ask for a report on that to get started. Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll move on to question period then. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Neil, come on forward.
First, I just want to congratulate the new members of council for your election. Actually, all of council for your election. I'll just ask Mayor Minions, is there any update on the hiring process for the CEO? Because we're in a, as you referred to a while back, an unusual situation.
Yes, absolutely, we are. And again, the intent was for this council to make the decision on next steps. And that has not yet been done. Today is our first meeting, but it will be looked at in the very near future.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other questions from members of the public? Seeing none, would somebody like to move adjournment?
Motion to adjourn, Madam Mayor.
Motion moved
Second.
by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
2:52.